Gen Z has had the greatest growth. Listen, Gen Z has had the greatest growth when it comes to increase in voting. In the last 8 years, okay, back to 2016, Gen Z, right, the junior high and the high school kids from 8 years ago who are now college and able to vote, an 11% increase in voters. The next generation was 7% increase in the last 2 elections. So listen, as we said at the very beginning of this, don't tell me that Gen Z isn't interested in voting. It is the fastest growing voter group in America. Can I say that again? Let me back that up. Gen Z is the fastest growing voter group in America. And so listen, a party, Democratic, Republican, that does not address this crowd does so at their own peril. That's how much power Gen Z has. So leaders, if you're watching tonight, we have got to show up in the next 9 days and get young people to understand how important it is for them to vote. Now, last week, we helped you with that, okay? We gave you some very practical ways to prepare yourself. I don't want to go over that now, okay, because we're going to do some other things here. But last week, we went over 4 practical ways that you can prepare yourself to vote. And that will help you prepare other young people to vote, okay? So don't miss that opportunity to go back to the socials, hit the link tree, and listen to that, okay? Watch that, however you want to do that, read that. We give you 4 practical ways to increase your preparation to vote, okay? So listen, this is what I want to do tonight. I want to give you some really important things about the church and politics, okay? Jono, again, thanks for joining us on this Sunday night. Great to have you here. I know you are in front of a lot of young people, so make sure that you heard our first few comments here. And everybody go follow Jono Gates, okay? You see him right there. Hit him up. Listen, the church and politics. We just talked about young people and some of those statistics. The increase, the 11% increase in the Gen Z vote, which is the greatest increase that we've seen in any generational group, okay, in the last 8 years. Listen to this. What I have learned over the years is that we need a correction of the prohibition that the church feels when it comes to their involvement in politics. Somebody hear me? We need a correction of the prohibition that the church feels when it comes to their involvement in politics. Man, I can't say that enough. MC, thank you for joining us. I can't say how much we need to bring correction to the church that doesn't want to get involved. Now, if you want to go back and follow it, 4 weeks ago, we dealt with this, and I gave you the scriptures, okay? Malia, thanks for joining us too, waving at you. Listen, I gave you the scriptures on the importance of the church's involvement in politics. I know, man, people are just, you want to check out. We might even lose you now. Walbrizzy, don't you leave me now, man. I haven't seen you in a long time, so stick around with us. Listen, I believe if we can just correct the prohibition, you hear me? We have to correct the prohibition that the church feels that they should not be involved in politics. And what we did several weeks ago is we gave you some of the top from Genesis to Revelation. I think it was 11 verses in the scriptures that demand us. Jesus commanded us to have a role in government. Do you understand that? He commanded us to. And so working that out is really simple when you begin biblically and not politically. Did you hear that? Danny, thanks for joining us. And Kennedy, thanks for joining us too. Listen, we have to get rid of the prohibition that the church feels, right? Like they're afraid to. And those scriptures will really help you, okay? They really will. So let me give you just 2 of those, okay? I don't want to go over them all. We went over 11 of them, but let me give you 2 of those texts that encourage and demand and command the church to get involved in politics. So put your politics aside and listen to the scriptures, right? The scriptures. Daniel 5. I love this. Leadership is all about the sovereignty of God. In Daniel chapter 5, he talks about how Daniel was quoted as saying that God is sovereign over the leaders that he appoints. And we know how important that was for Daniel. We know how important it was for him in the Persian Empire. And Daniel went on to be quoted by the Holy Spirit under the inspiration of God to say that God is sovereign. Now you might look at politics and say, man, I don't know about that. How could God be sovereign over what I see in politics? Well, I think part of that problem is it is the loss of the church's involvement in government. And what is encouraging is, as we just said at the beginning of this, Gen Z is taking their responsibility. The voting Gen Z, 18 to 24, college kids who were not able to vote in the last election, 30 million of them who were not able to vote. They are coming back to the polls, an 11% increase in the last 8 years. So I think you're going to see that. And Taylor, thank you for joining us. Bradley, thank you for joining us. Kayla, thank you for joining us. Man, we're hitting some good stuff. Here's another one. This is 1 Timothy chapter 2, okay? And again, if you're joining us, send me a question. We're talking about the church and young people in politics. And I'm just going over a couple of scriptures that we've highlighted a few weeks ago. I gave you 11 of them, how the church feels prohibited to get involved in government, and they shouldn't because we are commanded to. All right? So listen, anyway, look at 1 Timothy chapter 2, verse 1 and 2. Prayer and intercession places me in the right frame of mind. And when Timothy, literally, Paul, what he's doing in these words, he's urging, he is stressing, okay, Marie, and listen, he is stressing us, to us, to pray for those who are in leadership and to support those who are in leadership. And so when I hear the prohibition that the church feels, it really seems more cultural than biblical, okay? The cultural pressure versus the biblical pressure, because the biblical pressure is for us to be involved in government and politics, right? So anyway, man, I hope that is helpful for you. I hope it goes contrary to what you've been taught or what you've been listening to, right? So anyway, here's a couple of points. One of the questions that came tonight, again, thank you for joining us as we talk about youth and the church and politics. One of the questions that came across tonight is this. Let me read this to you. There is no denial of the significant role of the church in American history. What does the future of America look like if you are looking at the condition of the church? Oh man, right? The statement first, it's undeniable that the church has played a major role in the history of America. We know that. So looking at the health of the church, what does that look like for the future of our country? Well, I think honestly, to get that answered, we'll be able to look at that on Tuesday night and Wednesday of next week. We got 9 days before we can actually do something. Right now, we're just talking. This is just talk. We have never elected a president of the United States with our voice. We elect presidents of the United States with our votes. Can somebody say an amen? Just send me a little amen in the comments there. Our voice does not elect presidents. Our vote does. And so you see the importance of that. So this question that just came, there is no denial of the significant role that the church plays in American history. Looking at the American church, what does the history and the future, what does the future of America look like? Man, as I said, I think we'll know in 9 days, because all signs point to a revival of voting. Okay? Can you hear me? Sean, thanks for joining us. Tucker, thanks for joining us. Danny, man, what a great comment. I'll read that in just a moment. But listen, all signs are voting for the church to show up. Now, it doesn't look good because in 2020, 104 million, listen to me, I'm spitting out facts from Barna research in 2024. 104 million Christians did not vote. Christian people that call themselves Christian, 104 million did not vote. Now, let me just break that down. The last election was won by less than 7 million votes. Okay? So just put that number into perspective. And then look at this. Of that 104 million, 41 million attend church regularly. That's like a slap in the face. 41 million Christians who attend church regularly did not vote in 2020. Okay? That is a spiritual leadership problem. That my people who would attend my church would not understand the importance of not just our voice, but our vote. My wife and I just stood in line this past week in early voting in Dallas, Texas. We stood in line for over 2 hours and waited and spoke with people in line and had a blast, right? It's great for your marriage. It'd be a great marriage date to go vote with your spouse, okay? Bring some snacks. I did. And what we found out there is how important it is for even us as a couple to vote. I'm not part of the 41 million Christians who attend church who do not vote. That's stunning. So think about that now in light of how many people were decided the last election. Between 6 and 7 million, right? 6.5 million vote difference. And 41 million Christians who attend church regularly did not vote. Man, I hope that sinks in. You're going to see that posted all over our socials coming up. But anyway, so to answer that question, what does the future of America look like if we look at the condition of the church? If we look at it now, I think it's foretelling. The church has lost its voice in society because it hasn't shown up to vote. Yeah, I know, every 2 years, every 4 years, but think about it. If it's worth talking about, it's worth voting. Did you hear me? If it's worth having an argument, at home or at the family reunion or at work or at school, in the classroom, if it's worth having an argument about it, maybe it's worth voting about it. You understand that? So, man, I think we're going to know, by answering that question, I think we're going to know that in 9 days, if the church showed up or not. All signs are pointing to a voting revival, a voting responsibility. So we're hoping that happens, okay? Listen, Danny Vargas says, my spiritual father is Pascual Arabazo. He was thrust into politics. How do young Christians know when they're called to politics and not put into that position? Like, I think it's very similar to any kind of calling, right? I think you know it because of the people who are around you. Okay, think of this. Steve, thank you for joining us. The question is, how do we know if we're called to politics? Well, if you can't stop talking about it, that's one sign. It's the same thing with ministry. If I can't stop, Gabe Cole, if I can't stop talking about ministry, I'm probably called to ministry, right? So it's a great question. If I can't stop talking about politics and I have this great concern for our country and great concern for policy and great concern for government, then there's probably a God-placed passion inside of me for politics. So that would be the first thing. The second thing, and it's the same as that we look at when we look for the people who are called to ministry. Look at the people around you, at the people that know you best, because they probably have a really good idea of the kind of person that you are and your personality, the wisdom and the mindset, the mentality that you have, the skill sets that you have, right? And those skill sets are going to match the passion in your heart, right? And so ask the people around you, does this look good to you? Share your heart with somebody that knows you well and say, what do you think about this, right? So I think you can answer that in a lot of ways because it's very similar to what any of us listening here are called to do. Okay, we have a passion for it. We could look at our giftings and our skill sets that fit that calling, and then the people around us could really confirm that calling also. I think that's a really easy way to look at it. Okay, so I hope that helped. And Joanna, thank you for joining us too. Hey, we're almost done. Just a couple of more minutes. If you've got a question, send your question on politics with me right now. Otherwise, I'm going to give you one more statistic and break this down before next week. Do not miss next week's podcast on Sunday night at 9 p.m. Central. That will be 2 nights before the election. Okay, so you don't want to miss that. Abriana, Troy, thanks for joining us in these last couple of minutes. Listen, I want to read something to you, and I would love your comments. I'll read your comments if you want to comment on this. Listen, research has told us that just under 7 million votes decided the last election in 2020. You've heard me say that, okay? And over 104 million Christians didn't vote, okay? And you heard me say that 41 million Christians who attend church regularly did not vote, okay? So this thought is, what do we do to get the church to have an understanding of voter responsibility? What do we do? Shoot that little answer right now. Hit the comment section. What do we do to increase the voter responsibility of Christians? Okay, the 41 million Christians who attend church on a weekly basis who don't vote. What do we do? I think this is it. Now, I get it. There'll probably be, I think 2,000 people watched this last week. Okay, it was 2,100, I think it was. That's not enough, right? That's not enough to change. But if you understand the principle of velocity, okay, the principle of velocity, that 2,100 represents a lot more people than that. Do you know that the state of Wisconsin, hey, all you in Wisconsin, listen to this. Do you know that the state of Wisconsin was decided, the presidential election was decided by 150,000 votes. 150,000, let me correct that. That 150,000 Christians did not vote in the state of Wisconsin. It was decided by less than 80,000 votes. Okay, so think about that. Think about the significance of that. And then you'll realize why it's so important that we get the church to vote. So every little effort helps. What we're doing helps. What you do, the conversations that you have helps. Because if each one could reach one, listen, if each one could reach one, then we would transform the voter responsibility in the church. It would double. Man, I sound so idealistic, don't I? I sound so idealistic, don't I? And Troy Williams, you are exactly right. Conversations are the key. So you have 9 days. 9 days to talk about this, okay? And listen, don't, as we said at the very beginning of this, don't fall prey to the prohibition that we shouldn't be talking about this. That's cultural, not scriptural. We have been commanded to, encouraged to, asked to pray over this, and to render to Caesar what is Caesar's. We are asked to in every city God's called us, right? You know this. In every city that God has called us, to be welfare. To actually pray for and live and act upon the welfare of the city that we have been sent to. Jeremiah chapter 7. Man, some powerful stuff. Thank you for joining us again.